Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about the Divergent trilogy. The first book is Divergent, the second book is Insurgent, and the last book is Allegiant. And it's all by Veronica Roth, and I bet she's an amazing writer. I want to talk about this box here. And so this is Divergent, and it says one choice can transform you. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. And on the back is the second book, Insurgent. It says one choice can destroy you. And then the last book changes. It says one choice will define you. And those three things mean a lot according to this book. And the Divergent trilogy is kind of like a dystopian world, dystopian Chicago, and it's like the Hunger Games, except there's no like, may the odds ever be in your favor. There's more like war and fighting, and there's also love, which is high school stuff. But today I'm only going to talk to you about the Divergent, the first book. Okay, so before I get into the main character, I want to talk about these. So there are 5 factions in the world, in the dystopian Chicago world, and it's because they wanted to rule, but they can't rule all people at once. So they gather people with a similar personality to rule like one time. So the first one is abnegation, or the selfless. They believe that if everyone is selfless and no one is selfish, then the world will be a much better place. And another one is erudite, or the intelligent. They believe the world was destroyed because people were too dumb to realize anything. So they're too focused on studying, like they study every day. And another one is dauntless, and that's the brave. That's where people believe that the reason why the world got demolished was because no one was brave enough and no one stood up to anything. So they're all about like, courage, war, and they're more like tough guys. Another one is amity, or the peaceful, completely different from dauntless. And they believe that if there's peace in the world, everything will be safe and more defined. And the candor, the last one, is the honest. They believe that this balance scale, if one person is honest and the other person is a liar, then it won't equal out. So everyone has to be honest in order for the world to function well. So, let me get back to the book. So, the main character is Beatrice Pryor. And she was born in an abnegation faction. Every person is born into each faction, but when you turn 16, you have an initiation where you get to choose your faction, no matter what. Some people stay with their faction, some people leave. But Beatrice, it says like constantly in the book that she never felt like she was ever part of the selfless, that like she felt she was too selfish to be a part of that group. So she switched to Dauntless. Now the title Divergent, it means that when Beatrice took her test, she was in a simulation, and where she was in like a virtual world, kind of like a video game, where nothing was real but it seemed like it. And it only ruled out 2 choices, which was candor and amity, and she was eligible for 3 things, and that means she's divergent. If you're eligible for more than one faction, then that means you're divergent. And it's not good for her or the government. So the government hates people who are divergent because they're smarter than the average person and they could figure out what they're trying to do. So she switches to Dauntless, and she makes a lot of friends there, including Al, Christina, and Will. And she also makes enemies like Peter and Molly. Her leader, every group has a leader, and her leader was Tobias Ridman. And they call him 4 because he only has 4 fears. Isn't that crazy? I have like 100 fears. He has 4 fears, and eventually they fall in love. It's a little PG-13, I guess. But it's really, really good. and there's some betrayal between friends. There's some joining, and Peter suddenly turns, and it's crazy. And you can see it's not really a thin book, but I finished it in such a short time, and I'm sure you will too. Great. And the details were so like precise that I didn't know what to do. I'm like, is this right or is this right? It's like everything that seemed wrong seemed right. Am I making any sense? Okay. So she and then towards the end of the book, the Dauntless and the Erudite get in a war. So everyone in Dauntless, they injected a serum in them, which controls their body, and they're like robots, like we kill, we conquer, we demolish. So they're like, they only listen to the leader. However, Divergent people are not affected. And turns out Tobias is also Divergent. So, Beatrice and Tobias, they go to a safe ground and they find Beatrice's mother. And she's like, yeah! And it's like, yeah! And they have a happy moment there. And then suddenly, Beatrice tries to get away and her mother was a distraction. And then, yeah, sad part there. And every year there's a visiting day because, you know, it's sad to be away from your family for such a long time. So there's a visiting day, and that's where she meets her mother, and she finds out that her mother was also a Dauntless. She was a born Dauntless, and then she transferred to abnegation. There's a lot of spoilers here. I'm just saying. Okay, and then I'm not gonna tell you what happens at the end because it's really, really sad. One of her friends dies by her. Yeah, and this book I highly recommend to you. And I'm gonna read Insurgent and Allegiant, and I'm gonna tell you what I think after read them. I read this in like, I don't know, 2-3 days. Yeah, it was really short. And this is like the first time I heard of Veronica Roth's name, but just by this one book, she's become like worldwide famous. So I think there's a few lessons in the book Divergent. One of them is that family is always more important than anything. I think family is your priority. And the Dauntless have a saying that says, faction before blood. So they're saying, if you want to go home to your mama and cry, then do it, but you're kicked out of the faction. Oh, I should have mentioned the Factionless. The Factionless are people who don't survive the initiation, and their faction is too harsh for them. Because once you pick a faction, you have to stay there forever. There's no turning back. Or you become factionless. They're like the homeless, except they only get help from abnegation. The Dauntless and the Erudite hate them. And I'm pretty sure Candor helps too. And few of Beatrice's friends, go to the Factionless, which is pretty sad. I would never want to go there. Yeah. And overall, this book was great, and if I had to rate it out of 10, I would give it an 11. It broke my scale. And if you don't read this, you probably won't know what happens in dystopian Chicago. So if you live in Chicago, read this. Or anywhere else, really. But mainly, this book is about like family, friends, like relationships, and it's about enemies too. Keep your enemies close, keep your friends close, keep your family close. Because this is about war, and like war and love, like two way different things. Just like family and enemies. Totally different things, and they compete for each other. So they kind of bond, and I really want to do that with my friends because I really don't like some people, including my brother. So I'll be back with the Insurgent. It won't take long, I promise. And I hope you read this so that I won't give any spoilers for you in Insurgent. So, bye!